Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along Podcast, the new weekly podcast where I guide my off-meta friends and first-time readers through my personal favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel, Umineko When They Cry. We'll be discussing its narrative and themes, and they will work together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. We hope you'll join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's cat box. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on this one-way trip to Rokkenjima, we have our readers, James Capelli.
Hey, I'm James Capelli, and I'm super excited to start this read with you all.
And Bardic.
Hi there, my name is Ben, also known as Bardic, and I'm really excited to be playing along with this.
Welcome, y'all, and thank you for joining me on what I hope will be a very fun podcast.
I'm very excited.
So what is Umineko When They Cry? Also known as Umineko no Nakukoro ni, or When the Seagulls Cry, Umineko is a critically acclaimed murder mystery doujinsoft visual novel developed by 7th Expansion. By many fans, considered to be one of the greatest visual novels of all time, and admired for its unique take on the mystery genre. Now, that's a lot of terms I'm not sure everyone is familiar with, so let's break them down real quick. Murder mystery is fairly self-explanatory, so I'll skip that one, but doujinsoft is a pretty niche term, which basically means that it's a hobbyist self-published work, as opposed to being put out by an established author or publisher for profit. 7th Expansion, who also created the hit horror VN turned popular anime Higurashi When They Cry, consists of only 3 members, the founder of which is the writer Ryukishi7, who was actually recently tapped to write the upcoming Silent Hill F. Visual novels are digital books, with a few added features to enhance the reading experience. Elements like images, sprites of all the speaking characters, backdrop art to set the scene, and of course, music and sound effects. Umineko in particular is renowned for its music, often referred to as a sound novel, possibly because of the sheer difference in quality between the music and the original character sprites. There is a reason we are playing this game on a patched version to include better visuals, but if you would like to take a look at what this game looked like at release, go ahead and turn on the original sprites. Let's just say that they have character.
That is a way to put it.
Yes, they are, they're quite bad. It's definitely like when you have the programmer make the art of a game, it's like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, to be fair, it is a self-published work of like 3 people, so once I became a fan of it, I kind of like it.
And the speed at which they released these things, like I cut them slack for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
They were published, I think, 2 a year, which is pretty wild, considering these are
That's crazy.
12 to 16-hour long episodes of this visual novel.
Visual novels often have various dialogue options or branching narrative paths. However, Umineko forgoes these in favor of a linear reading experience, which is something I think we'll all be grateful for once we get started on this story's complexities. Examples of visual novels you might have heard of include Fate Stay Night, Doki Doki Literature Club, Slay the Princess is a recent one, Danganronpa, and Phoenix Wright.
The comparison to Danganronpa is what very much got me to at least start this, because Danganronpa has been one of my all-time favorite game series for years.
Yeah, it's super fun.
Oh, so good.
The first episode of Umineko, of which there are 8 total, divided into the question arcs and answer arcs, released at Comiket 72 in 2007, with semi-annual releases until the final episode, Episode 8, released in 2010. Although there have been several other supplementary pieces and compilations released on various platforms since then, even including a 2D fighting game called Umineko Golden Fantasia, which I've actually heard is pretty good. The question arcs received an anime adaptation in 2009 that received mixed reviews, and as a result, the answer arcs were never adapted into anime form, although the manga did eventually adapt the entire story. Umineko no Nakukoro ni is a widely acclaimed story, with the 2 halves of its story, the question arcs and answer arcs, sitting at ranks 8 and 4 respectively on the Visual Novel Database's list of every visual novel ever released, each coming in at an estimated length of 60 hours of reading, approximately 12 to 16 hours for each of its 8 total episodes. It is an extremely long story, coming in at just over 1 million words, making it longer than the Bible, longer than every entry in the Harry Potter book series combined. It is long. Almost as long as this podcast intro, so let's throw it back to my fellow readers. So, let's hear y'all's background with visual novels, murder mysteries in general, stuff like that.
So, for me, like I said before, Danganronpa was the thing, in my opinion. Danganronpa and the Zero Escape series
Yes.
were the 2 game visual novel type series to get me into the visual novel genre. Obviously, they have more gameplay elements than a normal visual novel does, with the escape room part in Zero Escape and the trial part in Danganronpa. But they really started to cement for me what a mystery, intrigue sort of story mixed with a video game, more interactive than just a book, can really feel like, and really just grab you and just pull you into something that you were never expecting. Those kind of started for me, and then since then, mysteries, puzzles, all of those sort of things have been my main intrigue points in a lot of media since.
Nice.
Yeah, for me, it's very much the same. I started on mysteries when I was 9 years old, when I saw a school production of And Then There Were None,
Oh, wow.
which is the play adaptation of 10 Little Indians. And just was into history, big fan of things like Lost growing up. And then in college, a buddy of mine handed me this game. We was looking at his 3DS collection, or just DS back then. And he's like, I think you'd like this. Just take this, play it. I'm like, okay. I popped in 999. I was trapped on a boat, and I was hooked for the rest of my life. Which of course led me into Phoenix Wright, which then eventually led me into Danganronpa. I have not watched Doki Doki because it just is too much going on when that was a fad, and I saw too many YouTubers doing play. So I was like, oh, the twists and what would engage you has already been kind of spoiled for me. But a lot of things I love about the genre, as you said, just the music and how it can use that slight visual element to help you bridge the gap in your imagination to capture you in the moment and to invest you in the story. And I'm not a very fast reader when it comes to physical books, so this already forces you to slow down and hit the A button a lot. So you pitched this to me as a potential thing, and I said yes, and then you told me how long it was, and I'm like, I've dealt with longer, it's fine.
I believe my exact wording was, too late, I've got you now.
Yeah. And now I'm begging us to move up our recording schedule so I can read more.
It's always great to hear.
I myself was first introduced to Umineko from watching the anime back when it aired in 2010. I had been a big fan of the author's previous works, Higurashi When They Cry. After the first and only season of the anime finished, I had heard the series was originally a visual novel and that English translations of the next 2 arcs were already out. I ended up binging those and completely fell in love with the story. I even went back and picked up the visual novel for the first 4 episodes and read those, and then read the last 2 episodes on release, finishing them both in a single night. I've read the entire series twice over in visual novel form, and also twice over in the manga form, so safe to say, I am a super fan. I have already learned the truth of this world and its mysteries, and obtained the title of Endless Witch.
What does
Bro,
that
spoilers.
mean?
I don't know what that means. What is the cat? What's the cat box? I don't know what any of this is.
Yeah, there's words you've said that I don't know what they mean.
I know, I'm sorry. And that is the purpose of this podcast.
Thus, I will be your humble servant, introducing you to the world of Umineko, guiding you through its many mysteries, and hopefully by the end, you will all join me in my absolute love of this series. So how exactly is this podcast going to work? Basically, we're doing a book club of the visual novel Umineko. Although I'm sure Kinzo would demand we call it a grimoire club. Basically, we're going to read a chunk of the visual novel each week, and then discuss it, its themes, and our ongoing theories about the story's various mysteries. And of course, we invite all of you at home to follow along and do the same. For this first episode, we read a bit more than we plan to do for the future episodes, because we want to try and get into the thick of the story as soon as possible. If you're following along at home using a copy of the game on Steam, or one of the many standalone installations created by the community, we read about 5 hours of the VN, ending at the line, "Sleep peacefully, my most beloved witch Beatrice," after which the clock advances from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
I've got to stop you. You said that wrong. It's Beatrice.
Oh, yes. So we are playing with a modded version of the game that adds better sprites, which I highly recommend, and adds voice acting. Some excellent voice acting, especially for the grandfather of the family, Ushiromiya Kinzo, who screams Beatrice's name constantly, and it's very entertaining.
Ah, Beatrice! Beatrice!
It's Japanese voice acting, which is why the E in Beatrice is dragged out as it is.
Yeah, I will say I actually turned the voice acting off because I find it very distracting to the story, but that's just me.
That is fair.
But I did have it on for the screaming of Beatrice, which happened super early on. So it's worth to keep it on for that part.
Yeah, and they do a fantastic job just in terms of voice acting. I believe it's the cast from the anime. I don't hold me to that, but it's a very excellent production.
If you want to read along with our discussions, go ahead and stop the podcast now and read up to that point. I highly recommend you do, but no worries if you don't. Another option besides the VN itself is to follow along with the Umineko Complete Playthrough All English Arcs playlist on YouTube, which we will provide a link for. We've actually broken our stopping points down based on those videos, and so y'all can easily follow along that way if that is your preference. If that's the case, you just need to watch the first 6 videos of that playlist, but be careful not to look at the comments. The video titles are all spoiler-free though. If you're looking for a place to talk about the story, discuss theories, or anything else related to this podcast, we'll have a thread in the Off-Meta Discord channel set aside for spoiler-free discussions up to the end of the content covered in that episode. And with that, let's begin our read-through of Umineko no Naku Koro ni.
Alright, let's get into it.
I am excited.
Our story begins in a dimly lit study, filled with dust and sickly sweet stench. This study belongs to an elderly man named Ushiromiya Kinzo, who is getting a medical checkup by his physician and longtime friend, Dr. Nanjo. Nanjo tells Kinzo that he only has 3 months left to live, and admonishes him for his continued heavy drinking. Ignoring Nanjo's advice, he asks his most loyal servant Genji to prepare him another glass of what I presume to be absinthe, saying, "I wouldn't die if I ran out of your medicine, but I would die if I ran out of this." Nanjo encourages Kinzo to write a will, which Kinzo scoffs at, calling it handwritten instructions to the vultures on how to devour and scatter his corpse. Kinzo begins ranting and raving about how he has nothing he wishes to tell or leave behind, that he was born with nothing, created vast wealth and prestige, and that all will be lost when he dies, as per his contract with the witch. After his fit passes, he does share one singular regret. His only wish is to see Beatrice's smiling face one last time. And assuming you're playing with the game modded to include voice acting, you get some amazing cries of Beatrice!
Kinzo. I can't wait to talk about Kinzo.
He's a very interesting character. We then get one of the few cutscenes of the game showing off some of this game's fantastic music and some of the characters that we might meet in the future. Depending on which version of the game you have, you might see different characters. They took the cutscenes from different versions of the game, so if you're playing on Steam, you might see one version. If you have a modified version, you might see another. So we're not going to talk about too much specifics of what happens in that, other than I'll just say that all the music in this game is fantastic. So
The music is really good. So I played actually through the opening twice. I played the first time just the normal Steam, like, download Steam, play the beginning. And then the second time was the new sprites, and that had a different opening than what I was used to. I didn't even remember an opening from the original Steam, but I very vividly remember, like, the bootleg opening, and I was like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Like, I had already got most of the characters for when I read it a second time, and I'm like, there are so many things that I'm worried about watching this, because I'm like, am I getting spoilers from the thing that it's actively showing me? Like,
yeah, that's why some people recommend there's a version where you can switch it, but there's no real spoilers other than that there do in fact exist a bunch of weird characters eventually.
yeah.
I downloaded it on Steam, which was the 7th edition version, which comes with already updated art, which is what made downloading the patch with the voice acting and different custom fan-made art all the more confusing. So I'm like, I got the new art, but I don't hear voices and I don't see their faces moving. And the text, like, is overlaid on the entire screen rather than a text box on the bottom. And I'm like, who approved this? It's so distracting.
That is how the original game was released. Yeah, it had the text just kind of displayed like that.
So then I got to the anime intro in which I saw the original art, and I'm like, something is very off here. I don't know what's going on. And I figured it out, and now I've got the patch. I really wanted to get it on my Steam Deck. Whenever I get it on my Steam Deck, we're playing on Steam Deck, I'll just fast forward through to the part that I'm at.
Or you just reread it all. Like, you just put in that time again.
I could be like Kyle and be like, by the time this is over, I've read it twice.
You've solved all
I got an extra 120 hours to kill. I'm not doing anything.
He's trying to steal my rank of endless sorcerer.
I thought it was
Don't
witch.
know what that means.
Our main story then properly begins on the first day, October 4th, 1986. We're introduced to our main character, Ushiromiya Battler, who is meeting up with some of his extended family at a small airport for the annual Ushiromiya Family Conference, after having been away for the last 6 years. We're introduced to several of Battler's family members, as well as receiving a nice breakdown of the structure of Japanese names, because apparently many of them have strange names by Japanese standards, as well as some of Battler's general thoughts and memories of each of them. In order, we meet his cousin, George, George's parents, Hideyoshi and Eva, Battler's father, Rudolph, his stepmother, Kyrie, and finally his Aunt Rosa and her young daughter, Maria. The Ushiromiyas then board their chartered plane, despite Battler's fearful cries, and we get another small cutscene during which we get the incredible song, Ride On.
The name of the song is Ride On. I'm not saying Ride On for the fantastic song.
I know there's a lot of characters right off the bat, but it makes sense as this is a murder mystery, and we do establish all of the people who will be our victims and suspects over the course of this epic tale. The in-game tip screen can also be useful for reminding you of who is who in this story, as well as finding explanations for the occasional Japanese term or expression. So then, what are y'all's thoughts on this group of characters?
I like the characters a lot. I like the characters in a way that even if I didn't like a character because I don't like how they act, I appreciate the character for how they're built, because they're all very distinct from each other right off the bat. They all immediately portray some sort of distinct personality traits from each other that make them not blend together. And I have a lot of trouble with characters in any piece of media where I hear a name and I go, that could be any of the women or any of the men that I've seen. In this one, even I can hear a name and go, oh yeah, I connect that name with that character for that reason. And I love the introduction of Battler, one of the best protagonist names I've heard in a while, actually. I just think that Battler is a very good, unique name.
Yes, it's based in the kanji of like fighting man.
Yes.
And he's like, his name like has a regular Japanese way you would read that, but because it has the characters for fighting and man, he's like, no, my name is Battler.
Yeah. So just the way that he is already a protagonist that gives his thoughts on things and doesn't just let it be a blank slate for us to interpret, I actually prefer over blank slate, boring protagonists that you see in many a visual novel.
I have to say it is confusing. I like that happens, but there are points in the story where I'm like, oh, Battler is narrating, and then it jumps to another perspective of, I'm guessing, either some unknown perspective or just an omniscient third person narrator. And I'm like, so when did we jump from, so we're following Battler? No, we're following Battler for only the scenes he's in.
Yeah.
And then later it's talking about Battler in the third person, not just his train of thought. So I'm just like, okay, I've got to keep in mind whose voice is talking to me right now. That is a little confusing. I'm not going to say off-putting, but
it is different for sure. It's not something I would have noticed off the cuff of just reading this, but you're right. There are sections that have a different narrator. Sometimes it's the person whose perspective we're following, but there are times where it is not Battler's perspective, and there's someone giving some explanation about something, and it is meaningful. That is actually kind of explained eventually by the storyline, the way it's structured.
As far as the rest of the characters, I like how a lot of their personalities you're prepped for by getting background on their life story, right? The siblings, all of the parents, you very much see, you get the family dynamic before you really get to see them as people. So you get to see how they fit the mold, with the oldest sibling not being there in the very first scene, and then introduced later, and the grandfather, Kinzo, how he gets introduced, and understanding how he's changed in the past several years and trying to figure out why. My brain is immediately going into what mystery tropes are we seeing here, and trying to figure out what is this character's purpose in the story.
Yep.
And why is their narrative being given in the way that it is. There's I think 3 characters who I immediately put down notes and then highlighted under theories the instant you meet them, right? So immediately I'm like, is Canon a secret sibling of Battler? And then I immediately, the first scene we have with somebody, which I'll let us get into later, I'm like, is this Beatrice in disguise? immediately that's like the way that the characters are written, their introduction is written, the first instinct that that Battler has as he sees them and what he knows about them, I'm just like, all right, let's read into it. So then I let the personalities of the characters kind of just slowly present themselves to me rather than really try to digest who they are as people. But I really like how everybody is a bit unique. I have a few characters that I have quick snippets of what I put down right away. I'll go through them real quick. Goda is prick. Eva is prick. Natsuhi is fucking weird, brah. And then my theory is that Maria will be one of the final people alive in the game. And then I wrote tropes. I don't remember why I put that down.
So for some of the characters that we've met so far in what we've discussed in the plot summary, my first thought is George, actually. George is the one that has stuck out the most to me.
Oh, he's the most grounded.
Because he seems like the level-headed, the most grounded, and you'll continue to see that throughout the rest of this episode. And my first thought is, he's going to snap at some point. He is the one I am most worried about in terms of there's gonna be some underlying pressure that has not shown its head yet, that either he is going to actually turn out to be a terrible person, or some stress is going to happen that is going to break him. One of the two. But in all that you get so far, he seems like the best person, and that is why
he's so nice. He's so good with kids.
Yeah,
he's well adjusted.
I love him as a character.
I will say his name is the weirdest name out of all of them. What the fuck is George for someone who is Japanese?
It's very strange.
George.
Yep. And then you kind of have the flip side of Maria. Maria being the opposite of George in terms of she's the weirdest one out of all of them. There's a lot of weird characters here. I think Maria is the weirdest one because she obviously...
Her speaking style?
Her speaking style, the way she parrots a lot of things. She gives off the vibes of someone who is still learning how to learn. Yet, I think that she is going to end up being a big key into this entire thing because I think she'll be able to think about things differently than the way that everyone else has been raised to do. So
she's not written like a 9-year-old. She's written like a 5-year-old.
Yep.
But they very quickly address that. And so it's like, okay, there's something going on here. And like I said, her background, who, where, what is her father, what trauma has she gone through? Is like, instantly that's what I'm thinking with these characters is like, where's the trauma?
Well, hold on to that thought, because we've got hundreds of hours.
Where is George's trauma? Because I agree, this man is going to change.
And then, sorry, there's one last thing. Who is Ange? Ange was mentioned so briefly, and then not talked about. And I want to know who Ange is.
Yeah, so Angie is Battler's sister, or half-sister, Kyrie and Rudolph's daughter after they got married. She's very briefly mentioned because she is not here. She's apparently sick with some kind of stomach virus and is staying home.
Staying with, Kyrie's parents or something?
I assume with Kyrie's family,
Okay.
Yeah. It's like one line, where's Angie? Oh, she's sick. I guess that's all for that character, and then
that I have that written down because I'm interested to see if it comes back.
We shall see.
I'm gonna talk about one more character, and I have to probably spend the longest on Kinzo.
Oh yeah.
Who is so beautifully Shakespearean.
Yes.
That the writing theme, and I will say, when I say narrative tropes, I mean literally in the details of how the prose is so different. Everybody lives in this world where this is how people talk and act, and then you fucking got Kinzo, who does whatever the fuck he wants, and just starts raving and screaming, and like, lamentations, and my children will all be dead if they don't leave me be. May they be cast into a fire and eaten by the serpent. And I'm like, holy shit, I need more of this guy on screen. Can't get enough of it. Because it's so over the top, but in a way that, like I said, like Shakespearean, we've seen that it works. It really sets the tone for this being a tragedy. Mm-hmm. Perfect introduction to the story, I think.
He has the best dialogue. he is the person I quote the most in my plot summaries, because every time I get to a Kinzo line, I'm like, I have to include that because it's like the best line ever. So we'll get a few good ones here shortly. All right, let's go ahead and move on, shall we?
Having survived the harrowing flight, we arrive at Najima's harbor, where the family boards a boat that will take them to their grandfather Ushiromiya Kinzo's private island of Rokkenjima, where the annual family conference is being held. Here we meet the third and final of Battler's cousins, Jessica, and the aged servant Kumasawa, who are here to escort the arriving family members. Taking a modified racing speedboat, Battler once again freaks out about crashing, much to the amusement of the rest of his family and to his own chagrin. Battler begins a discussion with his cousins and Kumasawa to try and distract from his embarrassment, and the conversation quickly turns to the reason why Battler had been separated from the Ushiromiya family for the last 6 years. 6 years ago, after Battler's mother Asumu died, his father Rudolph very quickly remarried to his then co-worker Kyrie. While Battler holds no ill will towards Kyrie, he couldn't forgive his father for the betrayal that old bastard inflicted on his mom. As a result, Battler left the Ushiromiya family and had been living with his grandparents on his mother's side under their family name until they recently passed away. Thus, this year's annual conference is the first time he's returning to Rokenjima and seeing his extended family in 6 years. Maria then begins crying out, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," that something is gone, and Battler recalls that there used to be a Torii shrine on a small rock outcropping that is apparently now missing. This prompts Kumasawa to jokingly begin talking about how this is a sign of misfortune, causing Maria to ominously repeat the word over and over again despite her cousin's best efforts to comfort her. Kumasawa then begins to tell a ghost story about the island of Rokenjima, but is immediately shut down by Jessica. Luckily, Hideyoshi shows up and accidentally sweeps away the ominous mood. As the boat arrives at the island, the cousins all declare that there is nothing to be afraid of as long as they are all together.
Alright, so we need to address the elephant in the room with this part. There are boobs.
Yeah, I kind of skipped over it.
you didn't include it, but there are boobs. So this story includes some very interesting choices for the way that Battler, you're normally not level-headed, but like pretty understandable protagonist, talks to Jessica, his cousin, and be like, I want to touch boob. And it got really weird, and I feel like this is a cultural thing between Japan and America.
Yes.
I've always heard that, like, America is very easy to talk about death, while other countries are much easier to talk about sex and sexual, like, connotations. And they're kind of opposites in terms of taboos to really talk about in media. And I feel like this is kind of one of those instances. So be aware that if you haven't read this or are thinking about reading this, there will be some uncomfortable scenes where Battler is being a downright perv.
Yeah. And they're not brief 1 or 2
No.
sentence things. These take up a couple minutes of reading every time it's brought up.
And it's strange and gets explained a little bit later.
Mhm.
Like, it actually does have an explanation, which I did like about it. But the first time it happens does not explain anything.
It's very much the mentality of an 18-year-old in what's explained. So it's just like, all right, I get it. I don't like it, especially when he's not talking about Jessica, but their 9-year-old cousin and what she will be like when she's an adult. And I'm just like, yo, not thrilled about that, but like you said, cultural references, if this isn't a recurring theme that keeps coming up, I can get past it. And it's brought up again, but like, it's not forced in your face a ton, so it's like, all right, I can move past it.
Yeah, it seems to be Battler's weird way to like break the ice in a lot of cases. It's kind of jokingly said.
That's later on when the idea is like, if I do this,
Yeah.
people should hit me away, and therefore tension is broken. And I'm like, dude, that creates tension. That does not.
Yeah, it's very much like a Japanese anime style thing. It's like
Yeah.
comedy kind of like gag. It's not a real life
Yeah.
thing.
It's a prop comedy gag for them, where it's not for a lot of Americans that would be reading
Yeah.
this, and that's where I think a big cultural divide is. Like, while we would consider some sort of violence, like slipping on a banana peel and like falling on your back, a prop comedy gag, the Japanese would consider this, I'm not saying equivalent, but some sort of on that scale.
I can see that being a thing, right? Like, you think back to a lot of popular animes, especially animes targeted towards like teen boys and young adult men, and how many of them have that one perv character, and like that's kind of their whole thing. You see it a lot. I'm not gonna claim I'm even close to well versed enough in Japanese culture to have a deep take on why it is, but just it is something you see in a lot of their media.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it, but luckily it does not get dwelled on too much more after the couple of times we see it here in these parts.
And he's also his father's son in some ways.
Yes.
Yep. And they bring that up a lot of times. So that is also contrasted with, there are some very mature thoughts in, like, mature not in sexually, but like mature as in like Battler has thought about his relationship to Kyrie, which is one of the things that stood out to me throughout this entire reading, and something that really drove me that I want to read this because I like this character of Battler even when he touches boobs. So I come from a divorced family. Both of my parents have since found another partner. My father is getting married sometime later this year. So I kind of understand this feeling of having a parent remarry. Yes, my mother didn't die. But when they say we aren't little kids, we know there's nothing to be gained by fighting. So we decided that we wouldn't force ourselves to pretend that we are family. Is one dialogue portion you get from Battler to the audience. And I just, like, that is such a profound line, especially from someone who's an 18-year-old, dealing with the loss of his mother, and then quickly getting replaced by his father, who most likely he didn't already like. So, it would be very easy for Battler to just dislike Kyrie. But instead, Battler talks about her like she's a real person and a real human being that just happened to come into a situation that is unfortunate for him.
She's also cool as shit.
Yes.
I love Kyrie.
On landing, the family members are welcomed by the servant Goda, a consummate professional who is there to guide them to the mansion. Battler notices the lack of seagulls, Umineko, and their lively nya-nya cries, hoping that once the weather clears up tomorrow, they will return to the island. Heading up a long winding path through the forest, the family eventually arrives at the guest house with a huge, beautiful rose garden in front of it. The family spends a while enjoying the rose garden until Maria becomes sad after noticing that one of the roses is a bit wilted. George cheers her up by tying a candy wrapper to the rose so that Maria will be able to easily find it and take care of it over the course of the visit. We are then introduced to another servant, Cannon, who is moving some gardening supplies with a wheelbarrow. Cannon is a very quiet and unsociable young male servant who is fairly frail. When the wheelbarrow he is using tips over, Goda scolds him for embarrassing himself in front of the guests. Battler, however, steps in to help Cannon with the large bags of fertilizer that were giving him trouble, which seems to catch him off guard and affect him. Arriving at the guest house, the family members are shown to their rooms, with all the cousins given a large suite to share. The adults then head over to the main mansion while the cousins stay to catch up at the guest house. George goes to ask Kumasawa if the servant Shannon is one of the few servants here during the family conference. Jessica then teases George over this, and Battler remembers Shannon as one of the few servants still working here 6 years ago. We then cut to the mansion proper, where the adults are waiting for tea to arrive. We meet Jessica's mother Natsuhi, a rather stern and proper hostess who suffers from persistent headaches. The tea has been delayed by Goda pushing the responsibility onto the final servant we've yet to meet, Shannon. As a result, Natsuhi is angered by the perceived ineptitude of her staff, as well as the constant prodding of Eba. When Shannon does finally arrive with the tea, Natsuhi's anger, despite her having done nothing wrong, causes Shannon to falter even more and thus receive even more anger from Natsuhi. After serving the tea and leaving, Shannon is consoled by Cannon and Kumasawa, watching on, who laments both Shannon and Cannon's treatment.
There's going to be a dynamic throughout, in my opinion, there's going to be a dynamic of servants versus family throughout this entire, at least first part, maybe the entirety of it, because you automatically see the difference in the treatment and how they're written, as one is more like the family is very important in a lot of the eyes of the other family, while the servants just aren't, and it feels like they know it. It's a struggle for me to read sometimes because it's like I don't like people feeling this way, but I'm also excited to see any kind of resolution from it because it sets up conflict for the future, which is, I guess, necessary in a story sometimes.
Well, it's kind of your classic classism in a way, right? And especially the way Battler treats Cannon, right?
Yep.
That he helps, and then Cannon's like, whoa. This doesn't actually help this guy out. Doesn't seem like he gets in any trouble from the other servants, but Goda is like, I'm a prick, so I don't like this. Yeah, yes. But the way that they refer to themselves as furniture which seems to be something that Canon is the most resolute about, almost as if he's trying to convince himself. Leads me to wonder if this is a Beauty and the Beast situation, or if they really do, like, this could be something that's very much lost in translation as well, where it's just like, calling myself furniture is the equivalent of like calling myself nothing. I am nothing. My opinion doesn't matter. I am here to serve, and that is it. Kinzo is an incredibly abusive man, as we've already seen and will continue to see, that I could see his rule of his mansion and his property and his household. You know your place, and when you know your place, you are welcomed in.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he hates his kids.
Mm-hmm. And there's even further distinction in that regard between the servants. You might have noticed that some of the servants have a one-winged eagle on their like sprite design, but not all the servants do. Only Canon, Shannon, and Genji are related with that distinction as being like the primary servants that serve Kinzo. And it's also something that's on the designs of the outfits of all the members of the Ushiromiya family that are like direct blood descendants. It's something that, like, for example, that Eva lords over Natsuhi in a later scene as well. I also want to try back real quick to a note that when you mentioned about the narration, this segment of the story, I think, has two really big moments of the narration being split. It shifts to Canon's perspective for the scene after Battler moves the fertilizer bags. And then when we're in the mansion, Battler is in a completely different location. And we're seeing, it very much is almost like a third person kind of perspective there. And you get it's a very different tone shift, I feel like, in those kind of segments. You get, like, whenever Battler is present, it's a little warmer. And whenever we kind of have the objective view, we definitely, I think that also kind of shines a light on the vibe between the Ushiromiya family and the servants' perspective. It definitely, I think it sharpens that distinction.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it, too.
I wrote down in my notes, like, oh my god, perspective shift, because I honestly didn't expect it to happen. I thought we were just going to follow Battler up until that point, and then suddenly we're following Canon, and then suddenly we're following third person / Kumasawa. It was a very big narrative point for me when it happened. I'm like, oh, this is not just going to follow Battler, which I think is good.
It's also a lot more grandiose in the way it describes things when Battler is not the narrator. It's because it's lacking his personal view. When Battler is the narrator, it's very much from his perspective. It's very personal. And then when it cuts away, it kind of feels more like the way that Kinzo describes things. It feels very kind of ominous and Shakespearean in a way. I think it creates a really interesting divide.
The beginning of intrigue has now started. So we have three different things that could come back in the future, at least from a perspective of someone who hasn't watched this. We have the missing statue on the cliff. Yep. We have the wilted rose in the garden that Maria takes care of. And we have... what was the third one?
The seagulls.
The seagulls, yes. Which, now knowing that the definition of what this called is when the seagulls cry, makes them even more prominent in my mind. And I just don't want to forget that those three pieces are the first little pieces of mystical intrigue that we see, because we're so caught up with these characters that we as readers know at this point there's gonna be some shit happening, and here's our first like little breadcrumbs towards the shit that isn't, I don't want to say mundane, but familial. This is more like out of the realm of what people know other than possibly Kinzo, which we'll get to.
It's really emphasizing you to look at what here is out of place, and it's we've never been here before. So why is it so unsettling? And again, this is where we were talking about real earlier, that this is the sound novel, right? You boot up the game and you hear the seagulls crying on the title screen. You get to the beach and it's just the sound of the waves. And then it's like, where's all the ambient noise that I'm used to from 6 years ago? Like, oh yeah, the storm is coming. It's just that. Why is this one rose wilted in a vast garden that is perfectly done? Also noted that they said that roses are good for curing headaches, so we know who has a lot of headaches. That'll be interesting to come back to. I haven't thought at all about the shrine until now, but Jessica kind of chastising...
Kumasawa was about to give some kind of ghost story.
I want to hear more about it. You were talking, I think, was it Shannon that you had said that may be like... the witch Capelli earlier?
No, I think it's Genji. I am fully on board with you. Genji is secretly Beatrice.
Genji, interesting.
Because we're about to get to this section, so I'll wait just a little bit for Kyle to talk about when Battler meets Genji for the first time. There's two key points that Battler brings up that makes me think it's Genji.
All right, interesting, because I think Kumasawa might be in on something.
No. Real ones stand for Kumasawa. That's what I wrote down.
I'm not saying that I don't stan her. She's fine. But, like,
She is fine.
yeah, she's fine. I think that she has a lot more knowledge that she's not sharing and knows exactly what's happening on this island, even if she doesn't tell her full truth. And that's why I really didn't want Jessica to shut her down from that ghost story.
I want to talk about the character design, especially with the eagle wing design, right? Because like I didn't realize, of course, going into this, that the one-winged eagle. Oh, that's Sephiroth.
Are we talking about Final Fantasy now?
I wish. The one-winged eagle design is basically on everybody in the family. Shannon, Canon, Genji. So who doesn't have it is Goda, Kumasawa, Nanjo, the doctor, and all of the spouses. And I thought it was so clever for noticing this because you don't see Shannon's anywhere, but if you go into the menu and look at their character bios, you see her pose. She's like, and her dress kind of flutters up, and you see like on the inside of her left thigh, she has like these leggings that reach down to her knee, and it's on that. And I'm like, so why is this so hidden? Why is this so secretive? What is the significance of the wing? Mm-hmm. And the way I'd also seen a lot of the art is that Jessica's body was always turned, and her wing is on her left arm. So I'm like, is Jessica not? Does that mean Jessica is actually secretly not a real girl, not a real member of the family? Because Natsuhi had trouble conceiving, and very quickly it's like, oh no, it's intentional. Who's allowed to wear it? And then she turns, and others like, I just missed it, So. Mm-hmm.
Deduction we're looking for. We're looking for you to come up with these, really got to pay attention to those details.
Always read the bios. You got to read the bios, man.
Always read the bios.
Back in the guest house, the cousins are catching up on things when Shannon arrives to inform them that lunch is ready. Battler and Shannon are reintroduced to each other, and Battler makes a joking attempt to feel Shannon up. Shannon, however, being a servant, or furniture as she calls herself, does not resist, forcing Jessica to intervene, for which Battler is thankful.
The scene sucks. Like, once again, we don't want to have to relitigate this. It's not great. At least this time, it's explained from Battler's perspective as being like, oh, this is how I'd like to break the ice. I expected to get slapped. He just accidentally walked into an issue where he's doing it to a servant who literally cannot refuse.
Which he's probably not used to.
And the fact that it's like, we are ordering you to protect yourself. That is what we have to do.
That has to happen is...
I appreciate... I get that it's not great from especially a Western audience that this should, you need to be setting these boundaries, but I didn't expect the Japanese content within this to actually set those boundaries and to actually be like...
Yes.
So I at least applaud them for taking, no, you need, yes, this is still bad. Don't do what your main narrator is...
Yeah, relative to the trope, this is actually a refreshing, realistic take of why someone might do this in a way that makes sense and isn't that Battler is just literally a creep. He's only slightly a creep.
He gets it from his father.
He does. I learned it from watching you, Dad.
It's explained that Shannon and Canon are work names, and that because both grew up in the same orphanage, they are practically siblings. The cousins then head to the main mansion for lunch. On arriving, Battler is reintroduced to Kinzo's right-hand servant, Genji, and as they head towards the dining room, Battler sees the portrait of the witch for the first time. Kinzo had commissioned an artist to paint it and had it displayed in the main hall just under 2 years ago. Depicting a woman with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing an elegant gown, Marie declares that this portrait is of the witch of Rokkenjima's forest and night, Beatrice. Battler muses that the witch, as he understood it, was just some ghost story told by grandmother to keep the kids out of the dangerous untamed forest of the uncultivated parts of the island. Jessica then laments that grandfather has lost his grip on reality and begun to believe that the witch Beatrice is real. Genji chastises her for indiscretion, and the cousins then head to the dining room. Finally arriving at the dining room, Battler ponders the patriarchal, chauvinistic way family members are placed around the table, indicating their rank within the family. With Kinzo at the head, followed by his direct descendants, then the grandchildren, and finally spouses sat last at the table, seen as nothing more than borrowed wombs.
In fact, he laments that if his grandmother was still alive, she would have been ranked further down the table.
Except for Jessica's father, Eva's husband.
Yes, there's a special exception for Hideyoshi because he married into the family and took the Ushiromiya family name as opposed to having Eva brought out of the register, which would normally happen. All sorts of problems that we'll discuss a bit later. Just a note, my ringtone is in fact a song.
Why is that not surprising?
That's funny. Nerd.
The song is so good. I'm so excited we eventually get to that song.
Kinzo is late for dinner, which Battler remembers as being odd, but Jessica reminds him that he is often locked up in his study working on his strange black magic hobby these days.
So you get this family now all together except Kinzo. We haven't met Krauss yet, but Krauss will be here momentarily, and you already know that he is technically at the head of the table minus Kinzo. The whole hierarchy is very different from someone who probably grew up in a Western household, in an American household, or even European. It's something that was a little not shocking, but like, oh, this is what we're going with. Here's a Japanese, not trope, but like here's a Japanese style of doing something, but like culture, but taken to like
it's culture
10.
Yeah, it's surprising even to Battler. Battler, who has been staying with his grandparents, who are like not rich, he's much more like grounded, and so when he sees this, he's like, "Oh wow, I forgot that we did this. This kind of sucks." And he apologizes to Natsuhi when he sits down. He's like, "Yeah, sorry that I am technically more important than you, even though you're literally my aunt."
Well, before we get to that, now I can talk about Genji and why he is Beatrice in disguise.
Yes.
Point number 1. He has been with Kinzo since the beginning, and 2, looks the same as he always have. Point number 3, he makes the devil drink that Kinzo inhales. Is that drink significant? Yes, absolutely it's significant. Why do I know? Because Kyle started off the description of like, oh, it's probably just absinthe or whatever. Bullshit!
I just have distinct knowledge of bartending, and I think absinthe is cool.
And I think thematically, Kinzo is ranting and raving in that first scene about how Beatrice, I know you can see me, you're standing there invisible laughing at me. Who's standing there right there, invisible to Kinzo's eyes as being present in the room, is Genji. Point number 5, what do we see immediately after we're introduced to Genji? The portrait of Beatrice! All that to say, that is my theory.
When you're proven right later
Is
on.
It a game theory?
The visual novel theory.
I'm not retiring.
I can see that. I also think that Kumasawa maybe won't be it. I don't have that much to back up my Kumasawa theory, other than I think that she knows a lot more than she's telling right now.
If she's been around for so long, why does she not have the eagle?
I think it's how much you're trusted by Kinzo.
Yeah. But then why? I want to know more.
And I think Kumasawa is actually an agent for a third party, almost.
Ooh.
That's where my thing comes in, is I think that she's very good at getting and disseminating information.
What if she's a witch, or she serves witches, but not Beatrice?
Yep.
We've got 120 hours of content to go through. They've got to start throwing some things like that, right? Maria believes in witches, not just Beatrice being a real person and whatever. Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe you're right there. That's a good theory.
We shall see.
We then cut to Kinzo, locked in his study, working on his strange black magic hobby. Krauss, Jessica's father, the eldest child of Kinzo, is banging on the door to Kinzo's study, trying to get him to come out and join the family for lunch. Krauss and Dr. Nanjo plead with Kinzo through the door to come out, but to no avail. The only thing Kinzo wishes is to have Genji sent up to prepare him his absinthe. Krauss eventually gives up and heads back down to the dining hall with Dr. Nanjo, leaving Kinzo raving about his beloved witch Beatrice once again until Genji arrives. Kinzo's study is different from other rooms in the mansion in several key ways. 1, it has all the amenities of a small apartment, including a bed, kitchenette, and bathroom. And 2, it has a special mechanism on the door that automatically locks at any time it is closed. This definitely won't have any ramifications for closed room murders later on, no sir. Kinzo laments the sorry state of his familial line, saying, "That fool Krauss squanders money like water, throws away 2 gold coins to obtain 1. With that, he deludes himself into saying he earned money. Eva is a slave to money, thinking of me as a hen or whatnot, as if when I die she'll use even my carcass to make broth. That dunce Rudolph just wants to fool around with women. Rosa bore the baby of a nobody. Jessica is incompetent and illiterate. George has none of what it takes to be a man. Battler is a fool who threw away the honor of the Ushiromiya family. And Maria is obscene to the eye."
Why is Maria obscene to the eye? That's what I want to know.
That one is like especially harsh.
Yep, it is.
Oh, Maria, she's just ugly.
Maria, the
Makes you
9-year-old.
wonder if she's a child of incest. Like her existence,
Ooh.
he can't tolerate.
We do have the mystery of who her father is. It has not been mentioned really.
Oh, that's such a I did not think of that.
I didn't
Capelli.
think of
That's
it till
really
right
good.
now.
Good one. It's interesting because like you get almost all of them for the 4 main children of Kinzo. You're like, Krauss makes sense. Eva makes sense. Rudolph makes sense. Rosa, sure. And then you get to the grandchildren, and Jessica is incompetent and illiterate. She doesn't seem so. Like she's one of my favorite characters.
Her grades suck, and I think that's the whole.
Sure.
No, they get into that, and that's again very Japanese culture. I'm a businessman. If you don't apply yourself to bring honor to the family, what are you worth?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it just the first 4 are like personality traits that I agree with, and then you get to like the last 4 and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. Is it really their fault?
I guess that's is it their fault, or is it the fault of the people that you just spoke about, like their parents? Obviously Rosa and Maria, I still think there's a lot to unpack with the 2 of them. So
Oh, definitely.
Kinzo then begins to speak of what he calls the demon's roulette. The power of magic is always determined by the risk staked upon it, like visiting a shrine at the hour of the ox in ancient Japanese sorcery to nail a cursed doll to a tree. The magic power dwells in the risk that it will be seen before 7 days pass. The more dangerous the risk, the stronger the magic will be. All the various miracles that appear in myth can be called crystals of astonishing magic power obtained through miraculously low probabilities and astronomical risks. Kinzo once more cries out in desperation for such a miracle to allow him to see his beloved Beatrice's smile once more.
A really interesting take on like the concept of magic.
Because Kinzo is all about power, right? And a lot of conversations on how he's changed over the past year, let alone the past 5 years, and how he's just gone crazed. One point to mention is the game leaves a lot of hints to be like, it's not necessarily magical, right? What do we know about Kinzo? He's dying. He doesn't look sick. How is he dying? Liver failure. Because of the alcohol, the absinthe. So he's having encephalopathy, which fucks with your brain, especially over long term, which you can use to non-fantastically explain the man's sudden ravings and personality changes and bipolar attitudes, especially towards his family. So using that and power as his dynamic theme to say power equals money equals high cost reward equals high magic strength. It's all that cyclical sort of themes that I'm looking forward to seeing how it continues to tie together, especially as the adult children begin talking about power, money and power dynamics and, why they all are the way that they are.
Yep. Capelli, I forget that you are good at medical stuff.
I work in health. I am a nurse.
Yeah. It's just then you start talking about nurse things and I go, oh yeah, he's good at this
he's
stuff.
He's not a computer science major like 90% of my internet friends.
Yep, exactly.
We then return to the dining room, where Krauss informs the family that the family head will not be joining them for lunch, to a mix of disappointment and palpable relief. And finally, with the introduction of Krauss, we have met everyone on the island, 18 people in all. We have Battler, Rudolph, Kyrie, George, Eva, Hideyoshi, Maria, Rosa, Jessica, Natsuhi, Krauss, Shannon, Cannon, Goda, Kumasawa, Genji, Kinzo, and Dr. Nanjo.
Alright, did you get all that? That's gonna be on the test.
Yeah. Use the tip screen. That's all I can really say. Lots of people.
You missed one.
Oh, Beatrice?
Beatrice!
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Maybe Beatrice exists. Maybe Beatrice doesn't exist.
Yeah, we don't know. That's definitely going to be part of discussion in a moment. But I'm curious, Capelli. Top 3 characters, bottom 3 characters.
Top
out of the 18 that we've just talked about.
Number 1 is Kinzo. Not even close. Number 2, at this point in the story, is probably Battler. And number 3 is probably Jessica.
Good picks.
Bottom 3, bottom of the totem pole, Dr. Nanjo, who really doesn't have any discernible character at this point in the story.
Fair.
Then probably Goda, because he's a piece of shit. And then probably Rudolph.
Interesting. I wanted to put Dr. Nanjo in my top 3 just because I think he's cute. but I agree with you that his personality is not there yet. I am interested to see
he plays chess. He's very multidimensional.
He's a bit chubby. He's a bit older, and he plays chess. That's three of my things right there. I'm in. Let's go. No, my top 3, I would have to say, I think Jessica number 1. I think Jessica is such an interesting character so far. I always love strong women who can take charge when they need, but also have their wits about them. I know they say oh, she's not all that smart, I guess, but I think she's gonna show she's gonna
book
show
smarts
up.
Versus street smarts. She's got intuition.
Yep, and she's so different from her parents. Number 2, Hideyoshi. Again, I think he's cute, but also I think that his character design for being married to Eva and being a well thought out addition to the family, not a core family member, but has goals, has aspirations, knows when to speak, when that he should just let Eva take the wheel. I find him a very interesting character. And also, I just like the fact that he is able to break the tension when a lot of other people can't, which in a family like this can only really be combated by being a little bit clueless sometimes, but maybe clueless in I'm okay with this kind of way. And then my third would be Kyrie, because Kyrie just seems cool. And then bottom 3 for me, let's go with Rosa. I want to hear more from her, and she started out stronger for me than she ended by the end of this reading.
If she gets better, she gets worse before she gets better, I'll tell you right now.
That's my number 3 worst. Number 2, I think is this is gonna piss off Capelli. I don't like Kinzo all
That's
that
all right.
much.
You don't have taste.
Yeah. I think Kinzo's very necessary to the story, but his parts when he's just ranting, I'm just I just want to know what's going on.
He's a horrible person,
Yeah.
but he's a great character.
Yeah.
Because we all have known a Kinzo in our life. No? You don't know the alcoholic, abusive patriarch of a family?
It might be you then.
Damn it, you found me. No, I can't say that I do. So it's hard for I'm happy that I don't know it, but I also see that and go, I don't like physical abuse. Abuse bad. So Kinzo would be second there, and then my least favorite is Natsuhi. I don't like the way that she treats the servants, and the headaches. She doesn't seem to be able to stand up for herself, but also doesn't seem to actually get along with her husband or be on the same page. Eva and Hideyoshi are on the same page almost this entire time.
Yep.
And meanwhile, Krauss and Natsuhi are on opposite pages the entire time, and I just think that
very much
he's
so.
above her.
Krauss is crafty, and Natsuhi is just there. I'm not saying that they're not bad characters. They are just my least 3 favorite. So
yeah, it's very clear at this part of the story that Natsuhi is going to decide.
Yep.
If whatever Krauss is going on, she doesn't know what's going on. She's taking offense at very offensive things that are eventually laid out. We'll get to that segment very shortly. It's very understandable that she doesn't really belong in this position right now.
Yep.
We'll definitely see some more of her in a bit.
We then get some exposition talking about how the annual family conference is really much like a business conference, as business plans and loans from the main family coffers are often the primary topic of discussion. Apparently, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the Ushiromiya family was great and prosperous, but the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923 destroyed most of the main family and its holdings. Kinzo, a member of a branch family, ended up becoming the head of the Ushiromiya family and was entrusted with reviving its wealth and glory. After somehow managing to pull together enough collateral to take out a massive loan, he gambled on a variety of long-shot business ventures that, through an absurd amount of luck, all managed to pay off. Eventually, he managed to gain influence with the occupying forces, which he leveraged to take advantage of the emergency demands for the Korean War. As a result, he was able to bring the Ushiromiya family back from nothing to even wealthier than before, and picked up the private island of Rokenjima in the process.
That story is really weird. They go into the details of how we got Rokkenjiima. Basically, he's a squatter. He took the island and was like, "Yeah, I'm just not going to leave." And the government was like, "You can't do that." But then he was like, "Yeah, but I've got friends in power." And they were like, "Okay, I guess we really can't make you leave. I guess it's your island now."
I think that this whole backstory is so important to the rest of the story,
Hmm.
and it's thrown at us as history. But I think what happened to bring Kinzo from nothing to now is going to be the entire catalyst for what's about to happen, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I'm sure we'll get to this after we get through the plot summary, but it's like, did something really weird happen? Or did he just get really lucky? And that has,
Hmm.
either way, has made a ton of events transpire.
Oh yes, that's definitely one of the big questions of
Mhm.
the story is he just really good at business or is there magic involved?
Back in the dining hall, everyone enjoys a spectacular lunch thanks to Gota's amazing cooking skills. Apparently, he used to be a chef at a famous hotel before he came to work for the Ushiromiya family. Shannon, once again, gets caught off guard by questions about the food she is serving that would best be leveled towards Gota, but Kumasawa steps in and disarms the awkwardness with one of her recurring mackerel jokes. As the servants leave to let the family enjoy their rose-themed desserts, Shannon thanks Kumasawa, who is seen as a mother-like figure amongst the servants. After lunch, the cousins go off to play at the beach, while the adults head back to begin the true family conference.
And this is the best part of the story, in my opinion, at least for this early section. This part in the parlor where the adults are discussing their businesses is just it's Shakespearean to say the least.
Steaks. We got steaks now.
Yes.
Dr. Nanjo reiterates his prognosis that Kinzo only has 3 months left to live. While Kinzo's health has not changed much over the last year, he is largely hanging on due to his sheer willpower, and due to the remote nature of the island, his next health crisis is likely to be his last. Having established that Kinzo could die at any time, Dr. Nanjo takes his leave, leaving the siblings to discuss the impending inheritance, a conversation that Natsuhi, in particular, finds especially distasteful. The topic then turns to Krauss's recent bad luck at real estate investments. While the siblings agree that Krauss has correctly predicted an impending demand for resorts and entertainment due to Japan's recent economic boon and cultural shifts, his recent projects were premature. And as a result of his missed timing and lack of confidence in his foresight, many of these investments failed and then were sold off at a loss. Even this island itself had become a part of Krauss's resort plans, building the beautiful guest house the visiting family members are currently staying in, with plans to eventually turn it into a resort. However, 2 years later, those plans have yet to manifest, and Krauss's debt has grown ever larger. Now that the resort boom is finally arriving, Krauss is finally slated to earn back money that will cover his previous losses. However, there is just one catch. With all of Krauss's previous failings and no personal funds at hand, how is Krauss funding these current new resort endeavors? After looking for his theoretical miracle investor for some time, the siblings were forced to recognize that no such person exists. This, in their mind, left only 2 options. 1. Krauss was embezzling funds from Kinzo's coffers. Or 2, he had managed to find the legendary 10 tons of hidden gold that Kinzo claims to have used as collateral for his revival of the Ushiromiya family. At this point, after many pointed barbs from Eva, Natsuhi has reached her breaking point and demands that Eva leaves. Eva, however, throws in Natsuhi's face that Eva outranks her and that Natsuhi isn't even allowed to wear the Ushiromiya family crest, a one-winged eagle, on her clothes, calling her a borrowed womb and a lowly maidservant. Instead of defending himself or his wife, Krauss tells Natsuhi to leave and cool her head, causing Natsuhi to flee the room in tears.
A lot happens in this segment. We get to see some really interesting turnabout of the way the story is kind of structured. A lot of the tension that I think builds up in the parts that Battler's not in the room has kind of finally come together, and we're starting to see that the adults have some serious stuff to discuss, and there might be some nefarious purposes going on.
Oh, you also learn that they're all cowards.
That too.
But it's like, once again, you've already understood the family dynamic and how these kids were raised, with the exception of Rosa, who had a large gap between the third sibling and her, and how these three all needed to combine to try to attack and team up on Krauss, and how in his mind this is all a game of chess. I'm sorry, Ben, he's not a little chubby.
No, sadly not.
And just how that's all presented, and the familial conflict, how it's navigated by each half of the team here, right? There's no desire to comfort his wife or defend his wife. Her emotional response makes him look bad. So what does he have to do? He has to take control of the situation to play his cards. Any sign of weakness, he loses ground, and that's all he cares about.
Mm-hmm. It's also clear that she has no idea. If there is embezzlement going on, she does not know about it. Or if he's found 10 cents of gold, she does not know about it. She's very much out of the loop in terms of what is going on.
In the hall outside, as Natsuhi leaves, Kumasawa ruminates on Natsuhi's unfortunate position in the family. Due to Natsuhi's issues conceiving a child, Eva took advantage of Kinzo's fears of not having an heir to convince him to allow her to keep the Ushiromiya family name when she married Hideyoshi. Eva then managed to get pregnant, with a boy no less, before Natsuhi managed to eventually give birth to Jessica. This gave Natsuhi a constant threat of having George, the older, more suitable male child, becoming the heir instead of Jessica, who, self-admittedly, doesn't want it, nor thinks of herself fit for it. While Kinzo has made no proclamation on the matter of his heir, Eva clearly wants George to become the next Ushiromiya family head, and constantly torments Natsuhi with that possibility.
I'm interested to know, because this is one of those shifts, again, that goes without Battler.
Mhm.
I wonder how much of this Battler knows. Like, does Battler know about Natsuhi's issues conceiving a child? Does Jessica know? Like, this is one where going to a third person, going to Kumasawa's perspective, or anything like that, we lose kind of the sense of what our main character knows, which is interesting, not bad, but just interesting because, like, we know this thing, but how will Battler react when he hears this thing if he doesn't already know?
I think in terms of Natsuhi's difficulties conceiving a child, I believe he knows, at least in theory. I mean, Natsuhi obviously was married to Krauss for quite a while before Jessica was conceived. So, like, that, based on like the way their family is structured, I think he would kind of understand that part of it. Maybe not like the specifics of why Natsuhi is so troubled, especially because he doesn't seem to see this dynamic played out as much. Eva definitely hides her barbs for whenever the children aren't around. So, like, a lot of this is hidden from Battler, who comments earlier, it's like, oh, I love George's parents, they're so great. Like, he's always saying that, like, oh, all the siblings get along so well, and then we get this scene where it's like, oh no, they're all at each other's throats looking for blood.
Well, it's twofold. One, he hasn't really seen these people in 6 years, so this is tainted from the eyes of a 12-year-old. And two, a lot of it is willful ignorance, right? They know serious shit is going on in that house, and they're like, I guess we should not be around since the adults are talking. And George is there to be like, yes, we are not adults. We're not part of that side of the family yet. For now, let's enjoy our childhood while we can and go off, and So it's kind of twofold. A 12-year-old gives a shit about serious family talks and stuff like that, let alone remembers things that, and like, unless they are directly impacted by it.
I bet George did. He seems like the kind of kid that's like, oh, I want to grow up as soon as possible.
George absolutely knows what's going on. I'm a little surprised that George isn't trying to be part of it, because either he wants to separate from it entirely and do his own thing, or he has his own plans to try to make his name in the world, right? What have we seen, though, already is we see the kids mimicking their parents in their own way, right? Natsuhi chastising the servants, Jessica scolding down Kumasawa for her thing, Battler reaching for women's chests and talking about gross stuff. His father's a womanizer. George, very serious, very professional. I guess you can't really see that too much in his parents quite yet. Eva definitely seems to be the most tactical of the three. And then Maria's a kid, so you can't really look at it too much there. But these cousins are going to be going at each other at some point for some reason. That's going to happen.
They're going to stay friends forever. They promised.
Maybe they'll find the gold. 120 hours of friendship. That's what it is.
Yep. I'm pretty sure it's just the four of them against the world, and all of our misgivings about George are for naught.
All right, we'll see.
We then cut back to the main hall, where the cousins have gathered in front of the portrait of the witch Beatrice. Maria, sensing that Battler doesn't believe in the witch, becomes upset with him. Battler begins to read the metal plaque affixed below the portrait, which contains the Witch's Epitaph, a puzzling poem that supposedly describes the hidden location of the mythical 10 tons of gold bars that Kinzo supposedly received from the Golden Witch Beatrice in contract for his own soul. Apparently, despite no such proclamation from Kinzo, the family somewhat believes that anyone who solves the riddle of the epitaph would receive the gold, estimated to be worth 20 billion yen, and the inheritance of the Ushiromiya family. The older cousins speculate for a bit about the truth of the gold, and speculate that perhaps the true identity of this Golden Witch Beatrice is just whoever originally financed Kinzo's financial climb, and was later mythologized as being like a witch. This, however, further upsets the young Maria, who fervently believes in witches. Battler and the rest pretend to believe in witches to pacify Maria, who seems to be appeased for now. Shannon then arrives on the scene with a batch of freshly baked cookies, and the cousins decide to take on a picnic down to the beach along with Shannon.
Fun.
I'm doing quick math just to see how much 20 billion yen is in today's dollars in USD.
My guess is a lot.
I think it's like close to 100 yen per dollar around there. It goes up and down, and it's been a while since I knew that number. So it's roughly $200 million of gold. They talk about it. It's like a non-insignificant percentage of the amount of gold ever mined by humans. It's a ludicrous amount of gold.
Yep.
Hence them being like, there's no way this is real. What? Where did this come from?
I wonder. So in 1984, a 100 yen was 129 yen. Is 129 yen in today's dollars, and today $1 in American is almost 150 yen. So 20 billion yen in 1984 is about just over $175 million.
Oh boy.
Which is not that much money when you're talking billions again. But in 1984, having that much wealth, definitely you're a rich family who lives on a secluded island and does black magic as your hobby. You know?
Yeah, they talk about it in like the terms of lives of salarymen that functionally is worth, which is a very morbid way to look at it, but also very appropriate for a rich family. But also interesting to note, the gold was apparently used as collateral for a loan. So in theory, the gold still just exists. It wasn't spent to do any of the stuff that Kinzo did. It was just used to borrow money. So in theory, there's a lot of gold somewhere.
And apparently someone would have had to see it. Someone that we do not know that is not in this story.
Yes, as is about to get brought up, when we return to the conversation between the adults in the parlor, they kind of bring up, we know that grandfather has to have had gold. He literally got a loan based on having brought a bank official and showed him a gold ingot, supposedly. So does it exist? The family doesn't really seem to believe it. They definitely seem to be in the camp that Krauss embezzled all that money, and they definitely seem to be using the concept of him finding the gold as pretense for blackmailing him.
In return for paying each of the siblings 10% of their share of this supposed gold in cash within the next 6 months, Krauss would be allowed to perform the audit on Kinzo's assets when he passes, allowing him to cover up any embezzlement he may have performed until now. However, Krauss is crafty, and he picks up on each of his siblings' desperation to be paid their 250 million yen quickly. Krauss then reveals that he had done a bit of sleuthing into his siblings' finances as well, and the results were not good. Apparently, Hideyoshi's fast food chain management company had recently gone public and begun selling stocks, a great way to raise capital for a growing business. However, he had failed to secure sufficient shares to guarantee maintained control of his company and was now facing a hostile takeover, unless of course he could buy back a large amount of highly contested stocks. In other words, therefore, more than anything else, he wanted a lot of money right now.
I didn't fully understand this. It happened once and I'm like, that's a big moment. And then you're about to say, it happens again, and I'm like, I'm confused.
Let me put it in another context for you. Imagine this line came up in the middle of a trial in Phoenix Wright. All right, and Phoenix Wright says, therefore, he needed a lot of money right now. It's very much like, aha, I got you. The confusion probably comes that this line comes from the third-person narrator, not from Krauss himself.
Yep.
But everyone's thinking it. Like, I got you. You're pressed for this right now. You don't have the power here. I do.
Right. It's very much another sign that the third-person narrator definitely has more of a flair for the dramatic in the way that they speak, because we get great lines like that.
Rudolph and Rosa are in similar situations. Rudolph's company was apparently involved in some copyright law violations with an American company, and unless he could pony up the cash to settle, he risked losing everything. Rosa, while not dealing with something quite so serious, was on the hook for a large loan she was the co-signer of. Therefore, more than anything else, they wanted a lot of money right now. With the tables turned, Krauss admits that he has no personal funds that could be used to pay such an exorbitant upfront fee, and mockingly proposes that instead the siblings should all work together to solve the riddle of the Epitaph and uncover Kinzo's hidden gold.
Krauss knows something. Not just about his siblings. He knows something about the gold and his father's finances.
It's
so cruel. Yeah, Krauss is also like, oh, y'all need money? I'll arrange to get loans for you guys. Of course, I will make sure you get the worst interest rates possible, because fuck you. He's just mean.
I mean, they're all mean. None of them are good people. And that's why I worry for their kids, who, so far, all seem like decently good people. And that's where is the trauma about to unfold after this comes up. But right now, you get this line, and you get this, and you're like, here is the main conflict so far.
Mm-hmm.
Here is what is setting up this epitaph that we're about to get to, and why the financial plus the mystical are about to meet.
It's a great motive for whatever crimes might occur. There's money that may or may not exist. There's a lot of people who need a lot of money right now. So it's a great setup for mysteries.
We then cut to Kinzo's study, where Cannon is recapping the confrontation in the parlor to Kinzo. Kinzo then explains to Cannon that the threat of solving the Epitaph's riddle is the power source for Kinzo's miracle to revive Beatrice. Dr. Nanjo and Genji stand in front of Beatrice's portrait, contemplating the epitaph found beneath, and Kinzo's inscrutable motives. We then are finally given the full text of the epitaph, which reads as follows. Behold the sweet fish river running through my beloved hometown. You who seek the Golden Land, follow its path downstream in search of the key. As you travel down it, you will see a village. In that village, look for the shore that the two will tell you of. There sleeps the key to the Golden Land. The one who obtains the key must then travel to the Golden Land in accordance with these rules. On the first twilight, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. On the second twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the 2 who are close. On the third twilight, those who remain shall praise my noble name. On the fourth twilight, gouge the head and kill. On the fifth twilight, gouge the chest and kill. On the sixth twilight, gouge the stomach and kill. On the seventh twilight, gouge the knee and kill. On the 8th twilight, gouge the leg and kill. On the 9th twilight, the witch shall revive, and none shall be left alive. On the 10th twilight, at journey's end, you shall attain the power of the Golden Land's treasures once and for the last time. The witch shall praise the wise and bestow 4 treasures. One shall be all the gold from the Golden Land. One shall be the resurrection of all the dead souls. One shall be the resurrection of the love that was lost. One shall be to put the witch to sleep for all time. Sleep peacefully, my beloved witch, Beatrice. And with that, the clock advances to 3 p.m., and we have reached the stopping point for episode 1 of this podcast. Whew, quite a long read, but we really wanted to make sure that we hit some good, solid mysteries in this first episode. So, what did y'all think?
I mean, talk about, this is hailed as one of the best VNs ever, but they've given us the entire plot of the game in bullet points right here.
Did they, though? Like, that, we...
Yes!
Yeah, like, yes, but also what does it mean? And I think the what does it mean is so important in this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the first part, behold the sweet fish river running through my beloved hometown, blah, 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 blah. I got no friggin' clue. I got no idea what any of that talks about.
And I will say to you right now, you do not have the context necessary to solve that part of the epitaph. Like, I will save you a bit of effort.
Sure. But on the first twilight, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices, whatever the key is. You don't know who those are right away, but as you look towards the next, gouge the chest and kill, stomach and kill, knee and kill, leg and kill. Gee, body parts. What seems to be on everybody's body part specifically? The emblem of the eagle wing. So, where's the stomach? 6 twilight, gouge the stomach and kill. George has the wing over his stomach. The chest is Battler. That would be interesting if this main character suddenly dies.
He's only making it to 5th twilight, damn.
Right? So looking at that, the 6 who are chosen as key sacrifices are these 6 people without the wing.
Interesting.
Which is Goda, Kumasawa, Nanjo, and the three parents that are married into the family.
The spouses, yeah.
Right, so that's Natsuhi, Eva's husband, whose name I always forget, and Kirie.
Hideyoshi.
And interesting that you had mentioned very much earlier on in the pod about possibly incest being the why Maria is.
Yeah.
Maybe those are the two who are close.
I'm fairly sure the two who are close are going to be George and Shannon. I don't think they die in the second Twilight.
Interesting. But shall tear apart the other two. You're saying George and Shannon. I think it might be the two that birth Maria.
Well, we shall see.
That would be crazy.
Um,
Doesn't matter though; they're all going to come back to life.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this real? Is any of this going to actually happen?
Yes. That is the core mystery of a lot of this. Is this a mystery or is this a fantasy story?
Can't wait to find out.
And that brings me to a segment that I think will be a recurring one on this podcast, is checking in on whether or not y'all are team mystery or team fantasy right now. Where do y'all land? What do you think the story? Do you think this is going to turn out to be like a pretty much just a straight up forward mystery with a bunch of misdirects, or is this going to be a fantasy story with witches and the mystery is a part of that?
Fantasy. Beatrice is a real character that existed, and people know her. And I don't just think it's going to be Kinzo that knows that has met this person. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth between whether it's real or not, and that is exciting to me.
I am such a fantasy lover. Like, it's hard for me not to just say it, but I also see all of the little through lines for this to be team mystery, where the Epitaph is going to be a prophecy of its own making, where because this was written, that people are it's going to follow itself because it's in everybody's minds.
Interesting.
So I could see a world where no actual things happen, but it's instead brought on by this insane epitaph where, these coincidences of the first paragraph happen, so therefore that we have to follow these to be able to get the gold, and somebody is going to. It's just happens going to be that it's going to follow up, but then I worry about the last 4 lines actually not happening.
Okay. Yeah, it should be fun.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Do y'all have any other suspects or theories y'all want to get off your chest? Do you want to make any called shots before we wrap things up? You've got some good ones.
I think I went through most of my theories. Genji being Beatrice is my big one. Maria as a child of incest certainly could be interesting. One big theory I have is that they are not in reality. Whether it is sci-fi or whether it's fantasy, I feel like there is a perfect picture of this island that was taken, which is void of other animals, void of the shrine, and that rose being the only wilted one in the whole garden, and the fact that they marked it specifically, that's all going to come back somehow. Someone or something has crafted the perfect image of what this place is. So it could be a simulation, it could be a mirage, it could be a carefully crafted experience by some sort of mastermind, right? And they're like, everything must be perfect for this mystery, even if it's not a show. It could all be like, this family must go down so that I can claim my birthright, the money, my revenge, whatever the motivation will end up being.
Meanwhile, I'm kind of on the team mystery aspect of it, where I think someone might have found this gold but can't get it off the island.
That's a lot of gold.
It's a lot of gold, but they can't do it while the head family is living here, and while any of the family knows it might exist. So there's a possibility that there's an outside organization doing it, but I'm not seeing like sci-fi or fantasy in this. I'm seeing that there could be an entire organization running behind this, but not necessarily. But in a setting everything else, in kind of like Cabin in the Woods style.
You know who it is? I know who it is. It's Disneyland.
Ah, yes.
Damn it, Disneyland! I saw that. I immediately put that screenshot in. I'm like, I have it. It's so good.
All right. Well, we'll see how those pan out. And I'm sure you will be surprised whether you're right or wrong. That brings us to the end of this episode of the Off Meta Umineko podcast. For next time, we don't plan to read quite as much as we did for this episode. We wanted to really jump into the meat of things. So the next stopping point is about 3 hours of casual reading, I would say. You'll be stopping at the line, "The roar of the thunder gave no answer," after which there is a set of shots of the various locations in the mansion where all the different family members are at, and then the clock advances from midnight to 6 a.m. If you're following along with the playlist, that would be videos 6 through 9 of that playlist. And with that, how are we signing off this podcast? I haven't planned that ahead.
Why do you guys cry?
Oh, so introspectful.
I'll give you one reason. My son cried today.
Huh.
We were watching Bluey, which is his favorite TV show. And it's a very artsy episode. It's a very space-themed episode that ends with one of the characters' stuffed animals waving goodbye to them. And it just struck him. He was like, "Bye-bye," and he started crying at the TV show. And I'm like, "It's okay, buddy. Look, another one is starting." And he was over it. But why does my son cry?
Wow, what a profound message.
Yes, I agree.
I cry because we have to wait a whole week before we can record another episode of this podcast. I'm excited to share this with you guys.
Let's see if we can do it faster.
Yeah, we may have to pick up the pace. We'll have to see.
For me, it's not going to be the reading. It's going to be finding time to record the dang thing.
Yes, because obviously this went quite a bit of time, but of course we had a lot to cover.
We did.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing this experience with y'all, and hopefully one day y'all can join my rank as the illustrious Endless Sorcerer, Golden Witch.
I don't know what that means!
All these things you don't understand. Hopefully someday you will come to understand it. All right, I will see y'all next time on Rokenjima. Goodbye.
See
Thanks
ya.
for listening.